Welcome to the replay of our Green Drinks February edition, where we focused on Ottawa's energy evolution. Mike Fletcher, Rebecca Haggen, and Janice Ashworth from the City of Ottawa joined us to talk about the plan and how people can get involved. Enjoy this replay.
Around the country, and it's been great the support we've gotten. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Nick Hebb with SmartNet Alliance. The Alliance is a group of businesses and organizations who collaborate on projects and initiatives to accelerate Canada's transition to a sustainable economy. For more information on SNA, please consult our website, which I'll put a link in chat as well. You'll be able to find out more details about our members and what we have currently launched, our business courses, which you can find on our resource page. Be sure to check out the membership page as well and see if that's right for you or your organization. For those of you who aren't familiar with Green Drinks, this is an international event, and that happens once a month in about 500 different countries. So we are one of many. Tonight on February Green Drinks, we're going to be featuring Energy Evolution, which is Ottawa's community energy transition strategy. This is the action plan for how Ottawa will meet the targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the community by 100% by 2050. So the clock's ticking, guys. So going to be looking forward to our presentations tonight. Its vision is to transform Ottawa into a thriving city powered by clean, renewable energy. And I'm excited to tell you on October 28th of last year, Ottawa City Council unanimously approved Energy Evolution, signaling the beginning of a new era. Work will now begin on developing and implementing the 20 project pathways identified in the strategy in collaboration with the community. So tonight we're going to hear from 3 of the city's key project managers about what they're doing to help speed the adoption of energy evolution in our city. Mike Fletcher will start us off with a quick introduction to energy evolution, followed by a focus on what innovations we need to see and which ones we already have. Following Mike, we'll have Rebecca Haggen, who will speak about the high performance development standard. Toronto and Vancouver have similar standards already, so it'll be interesting to hear how that's going to apply to Ottawa. Rebecca will outline what it is and what benefits we can expect to see from it. Finally, we have Janice Ashworth, who will be talking to us about the newly approved Better Home Loans program. Finally, there is a new way to borrow money to upgrade the energy efficiency of your home. Janice will detail the program, what you can expect, and how you can take advantage of this new program. As we go along, please type your questions into chat for each speaker. After they're done presenting, I will then go through the questions with them. After all 3 presentations, we will open things up for a general discussion on what each of us can do to help Ottawa's energy evolution and what we need to see in order to reach these carbon neutral targets. So without further ado, we'll bring in Mike Fletcher. Mike is a project manager, as I said, over at City of Ottawa. He started working with the city 7 years ago doing energy conservation, energy management work. After a recent period of split responsibilities between that and the planning group, he has joined the Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Department last April. Prior to joining the city, Mike had a variety of industrial experience in brewing, citric acid manufacturing, and biofuels. Mike keeps busy in non-work hours, enjoying gardening, whitewater kayaking, and a variety of volunteer pursuits, and hopefully some winter activities in there too, because those are summer-based. So thanks so much, Mike, for joining us. We'll get you to share your screen. I know you're a little bit further out in the rural part, so if there are any Wi-Fi issues, we'll work through it, but it's
clear.
All right. Thanks again for joining us.
All right. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'll get my screen up and yeah, I don't know, Nick, you stole my thunder. My big lead in was going to be that Energy Evolution was unanimously passed by Ottawa City Council on October 28th, but that's all right. I do have other things to talk about. As you said, I'll go through innovation, and I'll start with, but first I'll start with a little recap on Energy Evolution. Just to clear one thing up, like Becca and Janice, we each work on various aspects of mitigation. We work with people that do resiliency and adaptation, but don't do it personally. Those are people we work with. So I call my my little presentation here "Energy Evolution Business Arising" because we had started doing some work, of course, before Energy Evolution got passed, but now we're really into it and implementing. And what do you have when you're implementing? You have business arising. So I'll get into that. I'll talk about a few kind of innovation opportunities. I tried to pick ones that I hope would be useful information to the audience. In addition to this, I'm looking at retrofits of city buildings, for instance, deep retrofits. We're doing a biogas study out at the Ropec wastewater treatment plant, and we're doing some work with fleet. But these topics, I think there are things we can discuss and hopefully get some ideas into the public and some ideas from the public. So it's innovation we have, so things we started doing, things we're getting, and innovation we need. I won't steal my own thunder. I'll just go through it as they come up. So as I said, I'll give this is just part of a little recap on energy evolution. I think as some of you know, we're doing the community inventory annually now as opposed to every 5 years, which is great. If things are going to be improved, they have to be tracked. I think a lot of you know roughly, certainly by sector, the pie chart here on the left showing that about half emissions are buildings, the other half's transportation. There's some waste and there's some agriculture. By source, you can see that, again, you see how big heating is particularly. And I'll discuss that in a bit of the innovation stuff. And the inventory here goes a little bit beyond the scope of energy evolution. So community energy plans won't typically track emissions that are managed by the Fed. So you see aviation fuel in there. That's not something that's in our model. But we're all welcome to use less of it for sure. And then this is just the corporation, so it gives you an idea of what corporation of the City of Ottawa, where we're releasing GHGs. So you see the transit fleet is huge, municipal fleet and facilities are fairly big. Solid waste gets kind of bigger on the corporate pie chart because a lot of those community emissions are actually right under the city's purview and to some extent under our direct control. So we hope to be able to improve them. And certainly that was the plan in energy evolution. And I think anybody who's come to another talk about energy evolution know we like this waterfall chart. So the left-hand side of it, where there's no multicolors and a big gray patch for most of the y-axis, is 2016, and this is where the 5 big sectors where we're hoping to get our emissions reductions and where the plan calls for it. This is a buildup of a waterfall chart that's in more detail, broken down into 36 sections. So for simplicity here, it's just 5. Some things I'll mention. I like to trumpet community energy plans because they're the only really integrated ones. They consider where all the energy has to come from, where it all has to go, how much we save, from conservation, how much we can improve or reduce greenhouse gas emissions, mitigate them by fuel switching to electrically different devices. I think at other levels of government, we don't get into a plan that's integrated. And I think the integrated plans, such as municipal ones, show us how much we have to do. There's no sidestepping everything that we have to do when you see it all laid out in kind of a closed and integrated plan such as these. So it's integrating conservation, fuel switching, and energy requirements, and it all has to balance. So that's my standard pitch for many of the municipal energy plans, particularly some of them that we've done in Canada, because some of our expertise in Canada is good at making an integrated plan. And just to recap, the big thing that came out of the council approval to our mind, I think Becca and Janice would agree, is that what was in that whole plan, all the documents in there, were 20 project overviews, which are kind of the beginning of charters, and they detail what we have to get done in the next 5 years. You know, it helps give the plan and us as people who are implementing it some authority, because this passed council. So, you know, if we're working in the city or in the community and questions are arising as to why we're doing something, well, you know, we can always say that the answer is, you know, because it was passed by council. So these are kind of what they are in the buckets, roughly, that they would fit into. So that's kind of a recap on energy evolution, and I'll just get into some of the innovation we have. And the first couple examples of innovation we have, in fact, my two examples of innovation we have started before the plan passed, which is fine, because, you know, it went in phases, and after phase one, we identified some things we could get working on. And one of them was windows. I had a former supervisor who told me she was buying windows for her house with an R value of 18. And I got into an argument with her, and I said, such windows don't exist. And it became, well, as much as they could, a little contentious. And I said, look, I'll show you. And then I went online and I found some R18 windows. So these are R18 windows. The company we are working with is a company called Light Zone out in Edmonton. And I was delighted to find them, notwithstanding I lost a bit of face making statements that I later had to walk back. Because let's face it, I mean, we're used to windows having 10 times the emissivity of walls. And that's bad news if we look at, you know, all those emissions that are coming from natural gas and a little bit from propane and fuel oil. Windows are a big source, so we need something there. So we've put these in. I don't know if people recognize the room, but that's the family room in the basement of Glebe. The old windows, well, we make it easy on ourselves because the old windows might have had an R value of 0.5. They were in really bad shape. These particular ones that fit, have an R value of about 12, and we've confirmed they work. So we've done testing, either thermographic imaging or putting RTD temperature sensors on the inside and outside, doing it when the windows are shaded so we get accurate readings, and we're pretty convinced we're getting what we paid for. And this is just a little diagram of what you have for the windows. So, you know, if we think triple pane windows, we're trying to wedge 3 pieces of glass together. The middle piece has physical strength, but does it need it? Well, I don't think it does, right? Like, nobody's going to put their hand through the middle piece of a triple pane because there's a pane on either side. So thinking about that, what this window company has done is, instead of glass, they've got PET films in between, and because they're just films and they stretch them out on you know, what can be a fairly wide frame, we can go up to 8 films in between, and that's where we get R18, and then, well, actually we get 17, and then we slap a film on the window, we get to R18. So so that's, you know, this is something that that we're very hopeful about. And I'm mentioning it because you know, anybody could do windows. When we put them in at Glebe, we put signage up so that people would see what we've done. You know, it's a kind of neighborhood where there's some money spent by people on renovation of homes. So hopefully it catches on that way. The other thing that I've thought a lot about these windows is, you know, when we talk passive house to people, we hear back that passive house has trouble catching on because the window space is restricted. So, you know, if I think of passive house and the triple pane windows, they're they're specifying in Passive House, they have, they've maybe an R value of 7.5 at the best. This is 18. So what's that? 2.25 times more space, window space potentially. So maybe that can get interesting. So maybe we can be doing passive houses, multi-res passive buildings that have more market acceptance and give another way for passive house, which I certainly respect a lot as a standard to catch hold. So that's a window opportunity, and like I say, it's an innovation we have. So we've trialed it at Glebe. We'll finish doing Glebe this summer. We're going to do at least 5 other places. That's kind of getting settled where they are, but and so there will be announcements where else we're putting them in. But we're really hopeful on this technology. So like I say, with 8 films, including 1 on the outside piece of glass, we get to 18, which is almost wall-like. And like I said, Passive House could now have more windows potentially. And anybody here, if anybody's here knowledgeable about Passive House and want to weigh in on the possibility, I'd be interested in what people have to say. Another bit of innovation we have, and we started working on a few years ago, is power to thermal. So, most people might think that in Ontario, electricity can't compete with natural gas for heating. But in a Class A account, if we avoid the global adjustment charges, there are many hours of the year, I would argue about 80% of the year in terms of hours, where we can grab electricity at lower cost than natural gas. So Class A, again, are big facilities. They're over 1 megawatt in average monthly demand. So they're the biggest of the big accounts. And what we've done at one place, and we're ready to do in 2 more, I'll show through here just how we're installing electrically driven devices. We started out doing a mock trial with Hydro Ottawa on this 3 years ago. So we pretended we had a boiler. We actually programmed everything. So the building automation system was programmed. It sent out a signal as if a boiler was there, and and then we recorded when we dispatched, and we went back and checked the prices and found we were doing a good job. Choice of electric device. Unfortunately, sometimes because of space limitations or the temperature of building hydronic loops, we're into an electric boiler as opposed to a heat pump. But this year we hope to get heat pump in at one location as well as an electric boiler. And this is just a little schema of how it works. So we've got the quarterly gas price. We've got the real-time electricity price that's updated every hour. And we've got an outdoor cutoff temperature. And we're pulling in the real-time electricity price, the hourly price. I'll get to the details in a minute. We're pulling in the outside temperature. We're pulling in the quarterly gas price, and we make a selection. We either dispatch to a gas boiler, or so far, as I say, an electric boiler. The device certainly could be a heat pump. And dispatching. So here's how we get our information. We actually track the 5-minute price on the electric system operator website and pull in the 5-minute price. We don't pay on 5-minute prices, but we can spot a bad trend in an hour. So you can see here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but around 7 in the morning, as you'd expect, the prices are going up. Bear in mind, the y-axis is in dollars per megawatt hour, not cents per kilowatt hour. So put a decimal, move the decimal to the left one. And as I mentioned, we're watching outdoor temperature. That's just very crude. Basically, if the temperature goes above 27 C, we're going back to gas. And that's because our peaks in Class A are all happening during the summer. And that just gets us well and truly out of it. No chance of ever tripping up and hitting one of those really nasty 5 peaks that you can hit in the Class A account and end up paying through the nose. So I got to use some jargon. Always got to do that. This is Internet of Things, ka-ching, and this is smart grid. Look at that. And just what it looks like in the field. If we weren't all locked down, I could go take a picture of a boiler, but this is the control screen from Walter Baker where we set this up. So, or a part of it, what kind of fit to put on a slide. Here, whereas again, we're running an electric boiler, and it runs to a higher set point. So you see boiler 1 SP, 190.1 degrees F. They still use Fahrenheit out there, it's a long story, but anyway. But it's higher than the gas set point. And a bit of the trick of that, we can, when we switch to electricity, and electricity is cheaper, we'll run the whole system hotter, and we'll get all the hydronic pipes in the building hotter. And that way, when we switch off and go back to gas, you know, it'll take a while before the gas needs to even kick in, because, you know, we can mine some of the heat that we put into all the hydronic piping. And you see this, Dale just mentioned, you see it's not running, right? You see electric boiler enable is off. Well, that was this week. So it's been cold. This was kind of warm up time in the morning when the power prices will spike, the hourly price will spike a little bit. And so the program was doing its job. It was saying the electricity is expensive, go back to gas. So anyway, the windows in this I mentioned because I think there are opportunities that don't have to be limited to the city. And I should also add, in the Ontario Energy Board outlook for this coming year, they've talked about giving market access in Class B accounts to lower price power during off-peak periods. Because right now we kind of have market failure where sometimes we don't know what to do with all our power, but we're not selling it any cheaper on a lot of accounts. So that's, you know, that needs to be fixed. So depending on how that gets fixed, and I'm certainly staying plugged in and trying to influence it, we could potentially see this on Class B accounts. And if I relate that to Hydro Ottawa territory, there's only 100 Class A accounts in all of Hydro Ottawa territory at last count, and we've probably gone up. We were just under 10,000 Class B accounts. So, you know, if we can start doing this at far more accounts, it would be a great thing. So it has been talked about a lot for 3 years. I've mentioned it by times to people at the Ministry of Energy, and hoping we get an opportunity in Class B accounts and can really drive this further. So those are a couple things we have. Yeah, and just to recap, those are the numbers. Again, 100 in Class A, 10,000 in Class B. So, and they're looking at, and in fact, more than looking at, I would take what I saw in Energy Board report this year to mean they've committed to doing something about it. So, innovation we're getting, hydrogen's gotten big again, lots of yammering about hydrogen. I'll just mention that energy evolution does not rely heavily on hydrogen. We had to start relying on it when we went from an 80% GHG as our target to a 100% target, because we had to pull on more measures to be able to hit a 100% target by 2050. But energy balance works a little against it, as I'll explain here. So this will be a green hydrogen energy flow. If we had 10 kilowatt hours of electricity, we go to an electrolyzer, we get about 7. And pardon me, I'm just using ballpark numbers. Maybe people want to debate quite how accurate I am, but I think it's fair for this comparison. So we'll have about 7 kilowatt hours of hydrogen after we get through an electrolyzer. If we mix that with natural gas into a boiler that's running 80%, we're going to get 5.6 kilowatt hours of heat. If we're running fuel cells to move vehicles around, from everything I read, we're going to get around 3.5 kilowatt hours of force. So we're losing some energy in this. Sometimes we don't get to have perfect energy systems, and that's fine. But always be good. It's always good to be cognizant of the losses. If I compare that to a direct energy flow with electricity, if we have 10 kilowatt hours of electricity and we go into a heat pump, we're going to get 30 to 50 kilowatt hours of heat. If we go into a battery electric powertrain for moving vehicles around, we're going to get about 7 kilowatt hours of force. So you can see the difference. So, kind of a more direct electric train of using the energy is using it at least twice as, double the efficiency in transportation, and in heating, we're blowing the efficiency out of the water. So that said, we see some limitations, but it is in our plan because with energy, sometimes you're forced to use certain fuels in certain places. I think wisely, the province ran a consultation on hydrogen and asked about niche applications, which, as I say, I think is wise because let's find the strong niches, and if there are advantages in certain locations, let's get it out there. We suggested one, which I'll present, and this is at the wastewater treatment plant. So we see a good opportunity there. I'm sorry this is so busy. I couldn't change it after it was made by somebody else, but had ROPEC at the city's wastewater treatment plant. It's a Class A electrical account. Again, we can get quite a bit of low-cost electricity. We can make some hydrogen, and we can blend it into the biogas that's produced at ROPEC and send that to the gas grid. So that's what we can do with hydrogen. The oxygen can be mixed into the outside air that goes into air compressors that aerate our wastewater. The advantage of the oxygen is then the mass flow of air we have to move to get the same amount of oxygen is reduced, and the energy we put into the compressors goes down quite a bit. And the heat, we can use the heat for heating the buildings or heating the digesters. So we might be into an application here where kind of we're doing a little better than 100% in our use of the energy and the way that we're using it. So and the use of the oxygen is of good interest. Potential advantage will be that it frees up some plant capacity as well. So that as Ottawa grows, if we could employ this, we may not have to add so many aeration basins in the future. So this looks promising. I mean, it's subject, of course, to more investigation. We're at kind of conceptual stage with this, but that's something we suggested. Another item we had was possibly hospitals where they can use the oxygen and the gas as well. And I'll just close with innovation we need, and that's something on wind. So when we did the electricity energy balance in the model, we did some reference checking, well, a good amount of it, I would say, and said, okay, what would the energy balance have to be between, in terms of generation, what would it be between solar and wind going forward for all the electricity we need? So all the electricity we need for electrification of transportation and heating, and to replace and to supply needs with population growth. And the ratio is about 3 parts wind to solar. And that looks tough. I would have to get it regionally, because if you're like on this graph, if you're reading, that's 3.2 gigawatts or 3,200 megawatts of wind power we need to supply Ottawa. So, I mean, that's half the wind power the whole province has right now, roughly speaking. So we're open to ideas on this one. Distributed wind. I know that devices that go on buildings make pretty expensive power, so this could be tough. I mean, if a breakthrough comes, we're all ears. Virtual net metering, if we can get it from the province, would, of course, that would help. And depending how they do it, I mean, if we could procure power from far away, that would help a lot. Having the bulk grid just be less GHG intensive would help, of course, because it would take some of the pressure off to build all this. Because if we knew the province was going to provide it at a lower GHG value, we could cut it dramatically. And maybe we could look at using more solar with some more storage, so rebalancing it, maybe not not having it as a theoretically perfect split, but satisficed a little bit for the conditions we have. So anyway, that one I cast out to the hive because we need help on it. So that's it. I didn't say the end at the end, but that's the end. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Fabulous presentation. Really nice to break it down and think about in terms of innovation and, you know, where are we, what do we need, and what do we have out there that we can utilize. I know that was a really exciting conversation. Quite a few questions in chat. Luckily, Janice has been able to jump in and answer some of the technical questions, but there were a few that you answered. So a couple just on the general, your general intro. Bill Eggerton was wondering, why are Ottawa's per capita emissions almost 75% lower than national per capita levels? Any ideas there?
Oh, well, I think that would have to be averaging in, well, two things. It's community emissions, so a few of the things that fall under the feds are not in the energy evolution. They're in the inventory, but they're not in energy evolution because they're beyond our control. And then you're averaging in, you know, very, very high parts of the country. So you're averaging in, not to pick on provinces, but you're averaging in, you know, Alberta and Saskatchewan that have very high per capita emissions and where they've been going up for the past several years. So I have to think that's the main reason. I haven't sat down with a calculator and a pencil and figured out exactly why, but those will be my strong suspicions.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, Dan Vivian was wondering, do the national per capita emissions include oil and gas production numbers?
I've always believed they do. I don't know, does anybody on the hive have any thoughts about that? We compare community emissions quite a bit with Edmonton, for example, because, you know, they use the same consultant as us. So they have community emissions that are about 3.5 times higher, and that's reflecting, you know, all the refineries and all that industry that's in Edmonton.
Mike, if I could just jump in there, how I understood that question from Dan Vivian was, do the numbers that we're putting forward include the upstream emissions? And Dan, you know, correct us if I'm wrong on that, but no, our modeling includes scope 1 and 2 emissions. It doesn't include upstream production emissions from oil and gas. It does include upstream production emissions from electricity, though. So
yeah, that's the only one.
Complicated.
Yeah, but that's the only upstream emission is electricity. Otherwise, there's no. It's for people that know the modeling, it's all scope 1 and scope 2.
Oh, fabulous. And just to turn to the windows for a bit, that was quite an exciting topic, quite a bit of buzz in chat when you were chatting about those. Thanks to Janice again for including the link to the company there in Edmonton, I believe, Light Zone. Phil Riley was wondering, what is the life of the films in the windows?
So we believe the life of the windows are going to be about the same as triple pane. And I'm not clear personally if the light limit is the film or anything else about the windows. I mean, the film is PET, so polyethylene terephthalene, and you know, that's a film material that's been around for a long time. I think they know the properties fairly well. You know, we did discuss that with the supplier, and he had like, you know, he had papers on it that we perused and we were happy with at the time. That the film's not the weak link. The other thing we liked is they thought about pressure balancing between the films and thought about keeping moisture out between the films. So we thought that that gave us some reassurance too.
That's great. I won't ask you to say that 3 times straight there, Mike. That's a tongue.
No,
That's a mouthful.
no. I can't see
Matt
my
Jones,
comments, so I don't have it. Can't see where it's written down. Don't do that,
no
Nick.
worries. No
Mike,
worries.
do you recall what the warranty was on those windows? I couldn't remember offhand. I couldn't find it on the website.
No, yeah, it's a good question. I should have had that ready for tonight. I'm sorry, but I can find that out and get back to whoever's interested.
It sounds like we'll have to do a whole session on Windows. It's quite the topic. So Matt Jones was also wondering, well, how much do these windows cost relative to standard windows? Did you guys look at the costs at all?
Yeah. So, so if you get their R7.5 window, it's the same as glass triple pane. And then the price goes up from glass triple pane about $10 a square foot as you add a film. So, you know, if glass triple pane's around 90, the ones we put in at Glebe were about 140 a square foot. So, and I see a question from Chris about paybacks. So as a retrofit, they're pretty expensive as a payback. You know, we're into 50-year plus on the window themselves. Part of the value proposition you have to consider, though, is they drop the thermal demand of the building. So when it's time to replace the heating appliance, it can be smaller. So that's an important thing to consider with all the envelope work, is we get the envelope down, and then, you know, when it's time to switch those boilers out to heat pumps, they can be X many number of tons smaller and save us cost on replacement.
Great. Thanks so much. Yeah, no, fabulous topic there. Vadim had a question about wind to solar ratio. Is wind to solar ratio based on anticipated price of each resource there?
No, it's when it produces at different times of the year. So we looked at two things for that. Mark Jacobson has done the plan for having the globe powered completely on renewables. He says that Canada as a country needs 4 times the amount of wind to solar. And then we looked at what's going on in Ontario right now. So in Ontario right now, the ratio is about 3 to 1. And if you read the quarterly reliability outlook, you kind of see that each of them are making, in that ratio, each of those 2 resources are roughly speaking making equal contributions to the weekly peak. And more or less, although it's a little worse for wind, but it's a bit complicated, but they are at various times contributing to a bit of surplus power more or less evenly. It's a little higher, again, it's a little higher for wind. You might curtail wind or store it a little more than you would have to with solar. And then the thing we think about is if electricity is going to step in and do more heating through heat pumps mostly, then we're going, oh, Steve Marsh, there you go, 25-year warranty. Thank you, Steve. Then we're going to need more supply in the winter. And the contribution of wind during the winter, during January, February, and March is about 36% the last time I looked. You don't get anything from solar. And the wind does contribute a bit in the summer, nothing like solar. But if you kind of work that out, that's how we worked out, rationalized that ratios between those 2 things.
Yeah, great. Lots of topics. I know there's a couple more questions in chat, but I want to be a big cognizant of the time because we still have a couple presentations to go. So maybe if you can hop in chat there, Mike, and answer those, and everybody as well. We're going to unmute everybody at the end as well for a bit of a general discussion. So if I somehow missed your question or you didn't get it in chat, you'll have a chance to chat with the panelists at the end, and everyone will be unmuted as well. So Mike, once again, fabulous presentation. Thanks so much. You know, a lot of buzz there, a lot of people sort of chatting and good resources, and a lot of sharing and crowdsourcing there. So thanks so much, and we'll circle back at the end with some more questions. And I see quite a bit going on in chat there. Mm-hmm. So once again, cheers. So next up, I want to welcome Rebecca Haggen. So she earned her bachelor's engineering and mechanical engineering from McGill University. And since graduating, she has taken a keen interest in sustainable building design, working on a number of net zero energy and LEED projects in the private sector before transitioning to work at the City of Ottawa. Currently, she is working on the development of Ottawa's High Performance Development Standard, a municipal standard implemented as part of the planning review process aiming to shift the industry towards more sustainable development. So Rebecca's going to tell us all about that, and she can go ahead and share her screen, unmute, and once again, if you do have any questions, throw them into chat, and we'll go through them after her presentation.
All right, good evening, everybody. I think you should be able to see my screen at this point. So I'm presenting Ottawa's new high performance development standard that we're putting together currently and is expected to come to be approved or go to council for approval along with City of Ottawa's new official plan. So the high performance development standard, as Nick mentioned earlier, is fairly similar to things we've seen other municipalities do, such as the Toronto Green Standard or a number of other municipalities in the Southern Ontario region. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're trying to learn from those who have led the way and improve where we can. So it's a group of mandatory and voluntary standards that get applied through the city's planning process. The intention is to add greater sustainability criteria to the planning process and greater rigor around that. It's integrating into the existing approvals. The big drivers of the creation of the high performance development standard are the official plan's 5 big moves, the climate change master plan and climate emergency. As well, we're given direction from the province to address climate change and environmental factors as part of planning review processes. So those are kind of the main drivers behind this. And I should mention, I know we're sort of focused on the mitigation side of this today, but the high performance development standard also is going to be looking at resiliency and adaptation as well. So the benefits of having a high performance development standard is to integrate as many of the sort of applicable city requirements in one place to sort of simplify things, stimulates local economic development in the green building sector. It's a tool for us to help achieve our GHG emission targets, and it saves on costly retrofits in the future, which I think is a really key piece when you're talking about new buildings. The legislative context of what sort of gives the city the authority to put a standard in place like this. So we're sort of driven by the Planning Act, where we are given authority to require measures or ask how developments are approaching and climate change adaptation and mitigation. And then within that, we are directed to have an official plan, and the policies within that are what enable the high performance development standard. So it's a bit of a nesting approach, if you can kind of visually think of it that way from a legislative policy context. So the projects, the high performance development standard applies to site plan applications and plans of subdivision. And that, I've kind of given just the high level definitions of what types of projects have to go through those two processes. In case anyone's not familiar with the planning process, the projects that are excluded from this include things like small infill projects, 4 units or less, that kind of size. So it's important to understand its strengths and limitations. And one of the first questions we get when we start talking about development standards is whether or not like how does this align with the building code? Are we trying to exceed the building code? Where do things kind of come to play, particularly when we start talking about energy regulations within the development standard? And the way I like to kind of think of it is there's a lot of things that drive the GHG emissions and energy performance of new buildings. Some of them are addressed in the Ontario Building Code, such as minimum insulation levels, mechanical system designs, lighting selections, those types of things. But a lot of them are also addressed at site plan and plan of subdivision stage. So things like your building orientation and number of corners, amount of windows, that kind of stuff. And then outside of that, you also have what's driven sort of outside of the building specific design, but the greater framework that the building is pulling from. So utility systems and peak loads and things that are a little bit outside of the design team's control, but you can certainly approach systems to try and adapt and work within those contexts. The strengths and limitations of the standard. So it's really good at leveraging existing processes, and it enables us to take localized context into account, which the building code isn't quite as good at. What it can't do, it doesn't address every single energy requirement that we need in order to achieve our climate change goals. Ultimately, building code updates and adoption and buy-in from industry are going to be necessary to really make sure we achieve those, and addressing things like the performance gap that we see between design intent and actual realized energy performance. So the planned design of the program is to have multiple tiers. The first tier being mandatory, a requirement for all applicable projects, so those pursuing site plan or plan of subdivision. Tier 2 will be voluntary measures, and we're looking at incentive programs to bring those, encourage people to adopt those at a faster rate. And then over time, the intention is that Tier 2 would become the near to 1, and Tier 3 would become the new Tier 2, so taking a bit of a stepping approach. The categories of the standard, we have 8 areas of focus. The first two being fairly similar: energy and energy supply. So how much energy is the building using, and where is the energy coming from? We also look at stormwater management practices, which is something the city already looks at as part of its planning review process. We look at waste infrastructure to make sure that there's the infrastructure necessary for the building to enable waste diversion and waste sorting that's required to make sure we hit our organics diversion targets. Transportation, so that's looking at things like access to public transportation, as well as looking at electric vehicle infrastructure. Climate resiliency primarily is focusing on adapting to extreme heat days, so things like green roofs and white roofs. We are looking at how to adapt to flood, but that falls into the water and stormwater management category. Health is looking at what measures and how the building performs with respect to addressing public health. And the last one is ecology, so looking at how the site is designing for trees and planting with native species and that type of stuff. This is just looking at the 8 categories in a little bit more detail. I probably went into a bit too much detail on my previous slide, because a lot of it's listed here. So these are the items that are currently intended as Tier 1, but we're going through an engagement process right now with our external working groups. So there could be some fluctuation between this and whatever we end up as the final recommendation. And these are the measures within Tier 2, and I'm not going to go through each of them in detail because I kind of gave a bit of an overview earlier. The timelines, so what's led us up to this point, the official plan and policy directions that sort of set this all into motion came forward December of 2019. And then shortly after that, council approved the community GHG emission targets. So those are the two big drivers for the standards. So we really started to work in earnest at advancing this following that kind of rough timeline. And then towards the end of late last year, we had the draft metrics pulled together for the standard and are now with the working group for review. The draft official plan was released in November, and I apologize, the future-looking timelines are somewhat revised, as yesterday council voted to revise when we're going to, the official plan is going to council or going to committee. So it was in June, but they've extended that to September. So I need to spend a bit of time to sort of rework the timeline. So we're only seeing the past looking timelines at this point in time. And then just a quick highlight opportunities if you're interested in getting more involved. I'm open to other members on the external working group. We have a pretty solid group of people engaged already, but if you feel like you have expertise that you want to bring to the table, you can definitely get in touch with me and we can see how best to bring in your input. There'll be a public consultation, which is planned to start at early March. And then there's also official plan climate change presentation that we'll be doing February 23rd. If any of you are subscribers to our newsletter, I think that the link to enroll in that went forward, and if Emma's on the call, she might be able to put the link for that in the chat if anybody's interested in joining, as well as any formal submissions and feedback you want as part of the official plan. There's still a survey, I believe, up on the official plan's website that speaks to some of the climate change measures in the official plan, which the high performance development standard falls within. And then, of course, the council and committee meetings once it comes forward. So that's pretty much the end of what I was planning to talk to you guys about. If you want to get more information, there's contact information for myself and Melissa Jort-Conway, who is the planner on this project.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. Great to hear that we're getting a standard. I know people are quite excited about it, and shows that Ottawa is pushing ahead. There were a few questions about some things. If you're okay to go through a couple questions, I know there was a bit in chat and Mike was able to answer, but James Madigan is wondering, what about assessing the design effect of a new building on the local climate?
I'm not sure I understand the question, sorry.
Yeah, so maybe we'll get James to expand. I did have one from Pauline as well, saying, what is the city going to do to increase the design requirements of its own buildings? Currently, the city only requires LEED certification. Should it not be net zero as a minimum if you apply this plan? So maybe you can speak a bit to that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So as part of my role, I also am tasked with updating the city's municipal green building policy. So the intention there is to be informed by the energy evolution targets, as well as integrate the high performance development standard where it suits, to make sure that we're leading and leading sort of what we're asking industry to do, as well as for our own buildings. So things are coming for that on that front.
That's great. Jillian Cooper is just wondering, what is a refuge area?
A refuge area, so as part of the climate change projections, we expect to see more extreme storm events, which increases probability of having extended power failures. So refuge area is speaking to an area where people can go and take refuge from the, if the power outage happens to happen on an extreme heat day, take refuge from the heat, be able to cool down for a little bit. If you're in a condo building, you're after several hours of power failure, the water pumps might not be pumping water to your floor anymore, so you might need to be going down to be able to access water in a fridge and that type of stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We all can't go to Art Hunter's place, right? Art's got a microgrid out there in Canada, but I don't think we could all fit, although we're about 82 on the call, so we'll have to check with Art whether he could take that. I have another question from David Wilson. He's wondering, does the official plan as written actually allow above code regulations? Are the developers pushing back, and have they already won?
Well, we're still working on the project, so what I can say is every other municipality that has gone forward with this has had some pushback from some members of the development industry. I think within industry, you're always going to get varying opinions. So I won't paint a whole group of people with the same brush. But we can expect that there could be, likely are going to see similar types of things in our municipality. There were sort of 3 or 4 questions in there. I know I didn't get them all, so
He was just wondering about pushback from developers on that. I guess it's still too early to really see that.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, we get that question a lot as to whether or not we have the authority, which is why I spend quite a bit of time on my presentation on the authority. And I should mention, it's important to distinguish, these are planning review requirements. These are not building code requirements. So we don't overrule the building code. It's really about informing early design decisions so that things are getting factored in and really enabling climate change solutions early on in projects, not overriding the building code.
Great. Andrea Horan was wondering, does the city have interest in supporting rainwater collection systems for flush fixtures in new developments?
So that specifically, as part of new developments, isn't planned to be part of the program. We do have a rain program coming forward, although I don't know that it applies to flush fixtures either. You might be able to invite Simon from our team to speak about his rain program at some point in the future months. I can't speak to that in detail though.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Thanks for getting into it. So I think you touched on this, but Victor's wondering how can people get involved a little bit more in these projects? Is it the event on the 23rd, or signing up for the newsletter? Any other involvement spots for people to plug into?
Yeah, so those are going to be the key 2 places at this point in the game. You can email me directly if you have specific questions, or if you want to get in touch and kind of explore it in more detail. We expect to be launching a public engagement site. So I don't have a link to share with you yet, but if you're subscribed to our newsletter, you'll get that information once it becomes available.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. Yeah, and Emma was able to share the link for the event on the 23rd there. So invite everybody to sign up for that. Looks like it runs from 6:30 to 8:30. So that's great. Hopefully everybody can be over to that almost a couple weeks from now. So that'll keep everything rolling. Thanks so much for your hard work, your dedication, and for coming on Green Drinks and presenting.
Thanks.
Right on. So we'll keep things moving, and remember, we're going to open up for a bit of a general discussion after for those who are looking for some networking opportunities. So now we want to move on to talk a little bit about the residential piece. I know people are curious about how they can maybe borrow money to do some energy retrofits in their own homes. So Janice is going to talk a little bit about that. Janice Ashworth is currently a project manager on the City of Ottawa's climate change team, where she focuses on the existing building programs and financing solutions. She was the founding general manager of both Ottawa Renewable Energy Co-op and Co-Energy Co-op, where she was responsible for business development of solar and retrofit projects, management, and financing. In her time with energy cooperatives, Janice was named a 40 under 40 business leader and was awarded the 2017 Solar Woman of Distinction. She has a master's in environmental studies from Dalhousie University, and she's also an enthusiastic gardener, volunteers and coordinates at the community farm Meat Box. So welcome, Janice, to come on in and talk a little bit more about the residential side of things.
Great, thanks, Nick. Can you guys see my slide deck now?
Yep. Yeah, you may want to go to full screen, but we can definitely see the deck, so no problems there.
You can see that?
Yep, all good.
Okay, good. So I'm going to speak to you today about the Better Homes Loan Program. And the first thing I ask is that this be a soft launch. We're not officially allowed to launch it yet because the media announcement has to go out from the FCM. So don't anyone go running to the media, but you are getting a sneak peek at the program because we want you all to be champions for the program, and we're grateful for your support of this program. So we're calling it the Better Homes Loan Program, and let me tell you all about it. Let's see. There, okay. So in the modeling that we did under the energy evolution strategy, we identified emissions reductions that would be required from the residential sector, from homes in particular, and those emissions reductions have to scale up over the next 30 years. What's interesting from here to see is that most of the emissions reductions have to be completed by about 2040 in order to achieve the targets that are set within energy evolution. So we really have about a 20-year window to do this. Those milestones, projected milestones, show that by 2030, we need to retrofit 27% of dwellings, and by 2040, that's 98% of dwellings. And those retrofits are not just scratching the surface. We're talking about 70% thermal savings and 30% electrical savings. That's before fuel switching. So before adding things like EV chargers and heat pumps. So that's, electrical savings from appliances, lighting, and other ventilation requirements. But these are substantial. So that means, in full numbers, 327,000 single family units and 104,000 multifamily units. So we're going to need your help. So what does that look like today? So emissions today are mostly from natural gas use in the residential sector. You can see that tall blue bar on the right. Our emissions are predominantly from space heating, which is mostly from natural gas. Ottawa is predominantly a gas heated city, and so we have a lot of work to do there. Again, so this is mostly from space heating with a bit of water heating as well, which is often also done by natural gas. So you can see it's about 2/3 or 3/4 even space heating load, and then 25% or so water heating load is where the emissions are predominantly coming from. And I guess I should just say one other thing here. The electrical savings, even though the electricity is a very small component of our emissions output, it is important to achieve those electrical savings so that our grid capacity is freed up and is able to handle the load switching that we'll be doing by adding heat pumps and EV chargers to the electrical load. So that's the main rationale behind the electricity savings requirements. Residential energy per household is projected to decline even under the business as planned scenario, and that's a good news story. But that's because of appliance upgrades, of equipment, technology upgrades, as well as from building code improvements. But we need to go significantly further, so we need to get down to 23.4 gigajoules per household on an annual basis. So when we modeled what it would look like for return on investment for a household to do a deep retrofit like that, we looked at households of different ages. So pre-1980 and post-1980 is kind of the threshold when the building envelope improvements are a little bit different, although not significantly different. These graphs look pretty similar. I'll draw your attention to the gray line in the middle. That really shows where the paybacks are. So the good news here is that there is a positive return on investment from envelope retrofits, although it is slow over time. It does have, and it eventually does have a return on investment, and that return continues, right? Because that envelope improvement stays in place. So those windows you put in place that maybe you get are 18 windows or improve insulation value of the walls, that stays in place for 50 to 100 years. So those savings continue to accrue into the future. On the home equipment side, so we have heat pumps and domestic hot water on the left, and solar PV on the right. Very different stories here. So with today's prices of gas, heat pumps have a hard time having a positive return on investment. You can see the gray line goes down below the axis quite significantly, and that's predominantly because of the low price of natural gas. Now, what we need to factor in is a new carbon tax, which has been announced from the federal government, and that will change this story significantly. But also we need to create solutions to drive down the price of heat pumps through bulk procurement, through coordination, through improving skilled labor sets, to really sort of mature that market. And we'll see a decreasing in the cost, as we've seen with things like solar PV and electric vehicles in the last decade or so. Those prices have really dropped to create the story that you see on the right, which is the positive return on investment from solar PV. And that's just in a net metering scenario to offset your electricity bill. I should also say all of these financial graphs are assuming a fully financed solution. So it's assuming a 100% debt solution for these projects. So their savings are paying off the costs of the interest rates, and that's really how we're modeling the Better Homes Loan Program, is a 100% financed solution. So the good news here is that when you bundle all those actions together, you again get a positive return on investment that is slow but positive. So that's the good news story there. Barriers to deep home retrofit. So they're not happening today. There's very few, there's less than 1% of homes being retrofit from an energy savings point of view, and probably maybe a couple per year that are achieving the savings that we are calling for. So why is that? What are those barriers that we need to overcome? A lot of it is to do with ownership term uncertainty and long payback terms. So maybe the paybacks for these measures are in the 10 to 20 year term, and the homeowner doesn't know if they're going to stay in the building for that long. So that's one major barrier that this program will get around. There's also limited understanding of how energy efficiency affects real estate value. That just requires a maturing of the marketplace. There's limited knowledge and motivation to retrofit because there's no incentives or requirements or regulations. This is really just a sort of thing that can be perpetually put off. There's limited access to long-term fixed cost financing. And again, that's what this program is directly designed to resolve. And then lock-in. So that's what we really need to be concerned about. And all of you, I hope, will be thinking about this too, as you're out there providing advice and thinking about your own projects. But because we only have 20 years to really reduce our, or get rid of our greenhouse gas emissions coming from our homes, we don't have time for those interim measures anymore. We've used up our window of opportunity where natural gas can be a sort of interim measure. So we really need to be thinking about every asset that gets renewed at this point needs to be fully net zero ready and electrified for the most part. So the proposed Better Homes Loan Program, and it is proposed because it does have to go back to council with the final design, but because the funding has been approved, we expect that will go through. But the program, as proposed, will allow the municipality to add a local improvement charge to a home. So it will allow the municipality to invest in home's energy improvements and tie that obligation for repayment to the property itself. So the savings that are accrued by the occupant of that building will be used to then pay off the loan. So that stays with the building. So at the point of resale, that obligation to repay can either be paid down by the seller or can be passed on to the next owner. We can also target areas in transition or in need of repair or redevelopment. We can support appropriate building upgrades through expert advice and oversight by having a support and capacity building side to the program. We can stimulate private investment in property upgrades that reduce energy cost exposure to residents and businesses. And we can stimulate local job creation in the contractors, trades, and renovation sector. We can also help homeowners ensure that they're getting qualified trades and contractors. So we can sort of help mature that marketplace by profiling those that have received certain certifications and requiring them eventually to have those certifications. So the scale up, you'll see it starts very modest and it ramps up very quickly. In order to achieve our targets, we need to be retrofitting about 20,000 homes a year by 2030 and keeping that steady progress. If we can get there sooner, all the better, right? We're proposing with this program we do 600 homes in the next 3 years. I hope that you'll all help me in blowing that target out of the water and doing those all in the first year and a half. But that's what we've currently proposed, and then we need to ramp up quickly. So we need to learn from experience, and then this is a mass marketing campaign. This is a mass mobilization and community engagement campaign. So take that. I welcome your input on how we can do this, because it will require everyone talking to their neighbors and engaging their book clubs and church groups and community associations and you name it, to get to 98% of buildings. It will probably also involve regulation, but we're not talking about that just yet. So on the housing stock side, we've assessed the buildings by vintage. So we've grouped them into 4 different vintages based on sort of building code at that time. And we've identified that Ottawa has, so the oldest homes, of course, are the ones where we can have the biggest impact. That's called vintage 4 in this model. So those 2 slices of the pie that have been pulled out a bit, that's where we have the biggest opportunity. So that's single family homes in vintage 4. There's about 13% of homes in Ottawa are in that category. And then also row homes in vintage 4. We have a lot in that category as well. So we've designed the program to focus on those 2 categories to start, just because they'll have the biggest greenhouse gas impact off the bat. So in terms of where those exist, so we identified where the priority neighborhoods were with those row homes and single homes. You can take a look here. Maybe you recognize your neighborhood, and maybe you want to help us be a community organizer in that neighborhood to rustle up some retrofit opportunities. Dave Wilson, I'm looking at you. You reached out to me and offered support. So these are the neighborhoods we're focusing on, where the program is available to anyone across the whole city. It's for Part 9 residential buildings. So that's sort of 3 stories and less, typically single family duplexes or row homes. And it is also for owner occupants. We'll have a separate program for tenants, but that's kind of the only 2 requirements, and otherwise everyone is eligible to apply. But this is where we'll be doing our targeted outreach. The greenhouse gas reductions projected from the project are, as you can see, so again, pretty modest at the beginning, and we hope continuing to grow over time and accumulating every year as the savings add up every year, because each year that a home has been retrofitted, it produces less emissions the following year. Okay, that's it for me. I haven't looked at the chat, so I should see if there's questions there, but if you have questions afterwards that you forgot to ask today, you can follow up with Mike or Rebecca or I, that we're all here, and then our manager is Andrea Flowers, who's also there.
Thanks, Janice. Yeah, there's quite a bit of chatter in chat there, which is always great. Some naysayers, some supporting the cause. I've got a few questions to run through, and then I think it probably makes sense to kind of wrap up our formal part and sort of open up the lines for people to do rebuttals and kind of come on in a good manner, hopefully, everybody. So we'll just try to stay positive out there. So one thing Chris Habits was wondering, he doesn't want to be negative, but the renovation rate is nowhere near that high, is it? 98% in 19 years, he's wondering. Did he miss something? Is that what you guys are aiming for?
That's what the modeling is telling us we have to do. Yeah, and this is worldwide. So our renovation rate is less than 1%. And like I said, we're achieving these deep renovations of less than probably 0.1%. We need to be at about 5%. So yeah, this is a huge shift that is happening worldwide and is required worldwide. I haven't seen any jurisdiction yet break the sort of 2 to 3% range. So we're in with the leading edge there in trying to do this.
That's great. And Bill Eggertson's wondering, Ottawa excludes emissions over which we have no control, i.e. oil and gas production. But we say we must reduce emissions from electricity generation over which we have no control except HOL. Does Energy Evolution state explicitly which emissions are not our concern and which are in the basket that we need to reduce?
Well, yeah, so I mean, Mike, feel free to jump in on that one. But like we said before, just for modeling purposes, we followed an international standard that's being done for by most municipalities worldwide, which includes scope 1 and 2 emissions. The only place where it does include scope 3 is on the electrical side, scope 3 being upstream emissions. The rationale for that is that we do have the ability to generate electricity in Ottawa, and so we can, you know, offset that that electricity consumption with our own generation. We don't have the ability to generate oil and gas, at least not more than the power to gas that we've included, and Mike already talked a bit about from the wastewater facility. So so Mike, do you want to jump in on anything else there to add to the context?
Yeah, well, I think to completely answer the question, there is one of the published papers of energy evolution is the data methods and analysis paper, and it outlines everything we've done to develop the model. So that's part of the package. So if you go on ottawa.ca, it should be there.
I would also say that just because it's not in our model doesn't mean it shouldn't be addressed if you are able to address it. So things like reducing air travel and those types of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, great points.
Sure.
So just shifting gears there, James Madigan is wondering, are there enough experts, professionals to guide and do the renos? Is that something, is there a bit of a skills gap there? I know we're looking at that at Smart Alliance.
Yeah, there won't be yet, but demand and supply, right? We're going to be working with the trades associations to offer certifications and training to make sure that people are familiar with net zero renovation opportunities and some of the tricks that are involved, just to make sure that skilled contractor base is there. But no, definitely there's not enough available today, and that will have to change significantly over the next 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be great to see all those jobs created, right? Which is great. Houston Eubank is wondering, can this program be applied to individual condominium units in a building in which all units are being retrofitted?
I don't think so, Houston, but I'd be happy to chat with you separately about condos because they're a bit of a nut to crack. So I'd be happy to put my head together with a few folks on how we can best approach condos.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I know Houston's looking at his own development there. So let us know how we can support that at SmartNet Alliance as well. Pauline is wondering, what is the percentage of homes in the city that were built before 1980 and would not qualify for the program? How does that impact your modeling target?
And would not qualify for the program?
Yes, I believe that's what she says. Yeah.
So everyone is qualified for the program. Homes before 1980, it's quite a few. I'd go back to this pie chart of singles and of the vintages. I can add it up if you want, but looks like probably 40%. I can do the quick math if you'd like. But they're all eligible. It's just a matter of when we, how far the funds will go. So we expect this is the first capitalization of the program. And then if it's really successful and there's lots of uptake, we will seek to recapitalize it through additional means. So this first round of capital is coming from Federation of Canadian Municipalities as well as from Van City Credit Union. When we expand, or if we're able to expand the program in future, having Van City in for the first years will be very helpful to sort of prove that private investment can come to the table as well. And then Ottawa has also its own lending facilities through Infrastructure Ontario and through green bonds, and that might be another source of capital as well. But we have to first deploy all the first round of capital, and then we can think about recapitalization.
That's great. So everybody, the questions are coming pretty hard and fast in chat. So what I'm probably going to do is open it up for people to answer questions, but let's go through our list here. So Phil Riley was wondering, are farm building, e.g. root cellars upgrades included?
Sure, Phil. Yeah, we can talk about your specific project. I think I know what you're thinking about.
There you go. Brent Streeter's wondering, is there any expectation of the interest rate for the loan yet?
So it's not clarified yet from FCM. We're still waiting for the term sheet from them. We expect it to be fairly low. We expect it to be sort of in the 3% range, but I am waiting for the term sheet from FCM. So yeah, the length of the term will also be fairly long. We've modeled it at 20 years. I expect that we'll use the length of term as a bit of an incentive to go deeper. So the deeper you go, the longer length of repayment you'll get. So we'll offer shorter payment terms for just simple measures and longer payment terms for more complex or for more comprehensive retrofits.
Okay, we've got one from Kathleen O'Hara. She's wondering, are you going to try to do mass retrofits? Doing them individually is more expensive than by the block. Anything on mass retrofits?
Yeah, I mean, we're focusing on these neighborhoods partially for that reason. I know I've seen a bit in the chat about Energy Sprong, which is a different form of mass retrofit. It's sort of a panelized exterior retrofit, which there's some envelope retrofit, pilots happening with Energy Sprong type approaches with the federal government and Ottawa Community Housing. So we're not proposing that for this particular round, but we certainly are interested in how we can further those lessons from the pilot program. That's more for sort of a multi-unit type model though. But yeah, so in terms of sort of bundling with this sort of neighborhood-based approach, we're hopeful that we'll be able to find some sort of bundling approach, and it might be either at a neighborhood level or at sort of a technology level. Like maybe we can get, bulk procurement deals on heat pumps and high efficiency windows, right? Which would be two of your most costly items, and perhaps could be procured in bulk. So those kinds of measures we will be looking to facilitate through both this program and also a commercial program that I'm working on.
That's great. Someone was wondering, can you re-explain what renovations would look like in a single family dwelling built in 1930?
So first you should get an energy audit, but I mean, measures are going to be fairly similar across most buildings, right? So it's going to involve air sealing. We're actually requiring an air sealing improvement as part of this program because it's the most cost-effective measure that helps the others all have a better payback. So that's just caulking and weather stripping around every gap. That's the easy place to start. And then attic insulation is another easy place if it's not done yet. Wall insulation is likely to be required for most buildings. Foundation insulation in the basement or around the outside of the basement is likely a measure. Appliance upgrades, lighting upgrades to make them more electrically efficient. And then we're likely looking at a switch of the heating system from natural gas to an electric heat pump. And it likely also involves switching out the natural gas water heater to either an electric or a heat pump water heater.
Great, and I'm just a reminder, everybody, I'm going to go around and let everybody unmute if I didn't get to your question. Pamela is wondering, what will there be? What will the criteria be for houses to participate in the retrofit? She has a 1958 single home, but have done various upgrades over the years since they purchased in 2000. Wondering if we could just go straight to air source heat pump and water heater. What about the GHGs generated from various materials used in the retrofit?
Yeah, so a lot of these specific questions, do you want me to sort of take them, Nick, or do you want to take more general questions that apply to everyone? Because I think if we get into every one person's needs, we'll spend a lot of the time, we'll use up all of our time. I'm happy to chat with you, Pam, separately, but I'm just wondering if there's sort of program specific measures that everyone would be relevant to hear.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I can't keep up with the questions in chat, guys. So what we're going to do, I think what makes most sense is if anybody's got a question and wants to come on, definitely you're going to have, just raise your hand add your name into chat saying, I have a question. I'll come around and unmute you so that you can kind of have a rebuttal there. So everybody raise your hand if you know how to do that. That's in the reactions tab, and I'll come around and unmute you. You'll have to unmute yourself. So do that, or if you have a question that I didn't get to in chat, just throw your name into chat and I'll come around and unmute you. I'm sorry, guys. The questions were coming so fast and furious that...
Okay, and to not totally ignore Pam's question, I think the sort of general answer that I would give that applies to everyone is that we do want to see thermal reductions before just fuel switching. So because of that maximum energy load that we can generate in the city, we do need to be keeping in mind, thermal reductions first and then fuel switching second as sort of a general practice. However, with this program, we're not going to mandate anything additional except for the air sealing as the one measure that we require will be part of the solution. And then other measures on top of that are up to your choosing. We do require an energy audit, and that audit will lay out what your most opportune options are, and we'll encourage you to work with the auditor to work through what your best solution is, because it will be different for each home. But do keep in mind that thermal reductions of 70% is what's modeled in energy evolution, and that's, that's across the board, right?
Great. So I've got a question from Pete Basso, one of our members. Then we're going to go to Michelle, and then I've got Phil Riley. So Pete, you'll just have to unmute yourself there. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, sir, very, very much. And thank you very much, Janice. Well done. I'm curious, as somebody obviously who sort of works in the retrofit sector, and somebody that can hopefully help push the adoption of these programs as we're talking to our clients. Is there sort of a general time frame that you would think that we should be providing to people when this type of the program's going to effectively be rolled out? I know we're still waiting on interest rates and a number of things, but it would probably help for us to help push the program if we could let people know that something's coming in, 3, 6, 9 months, etc.
Yeah, it's a good question, Pete, and I don't want to be held accountable for that because it's I'm relatively.
We're going to write this down, Janice.
Sometimes timelines are always surprising for me, but I'm expecting that we'll be having something out in the sort of 4 to 6 month range. We're hiring someone to run the program, which is the first step, and it does have to go back to council for final approval of the final design with the terms and all that. So I expect by summer we should have a program that people can take advantage of. We are encouraging people to give us their submit it to us if they're interested ahead of time, and we'll make sure that we create a list and get in touch once the program is ready to go. So you can email the General Energy Evolution line and express your interest in the program, and we'll keep track of that. Or you can email me directly if you would like.
That's great. So we've got Michelle up next. Michelle, you'll have to unmute yourself. Then we're going to go over to Phil, and we've got Chris Habits after that. If anybody does have questions, please raise your hand and I can unmute you.
Okay, my question again is for Janice. At the conference a couple weeks ago, you had referred to the Canadian Home Energy Retrofit program. I've been scouring the internet looking for that thing, and I can't seem to find any mention of it. Can you, and you were suggesting also that perhaps for solar panels, that would be the right program to use. I've also spoken to several vendors of solar systems. They don't seem to know about it. Do you have any?
Oh, this is the federal grant. Yeah, you're not going to find anything on the internet yet. The best thing you'll find is a reference from the finance minister back in December. I think it was around December 3rd or 4th that it was announced that they were launching retroactive to December 1st, a $5,000 grant that would be eligible or that homeowners could apply to for retrofitting their homes. NRCan is frantically working on creating the intake website for that. So it's not available on NRCan's website yet, but they are expecting it will be up in February or so, I'm told. But yeah, the best thing you can find is just a press release from Chrystia Freeland from early December that mentions it. And I can assure you that it's coming. They are committed to it. They have announced it. It's just a matter of getting the website to allow people to apply.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing, it's in March with the budget. Once that gets passed, then we'll start to see some action, but it is retroactive. Sense, yeah. So people can start rolling on their upgrades now, as long as it's tied to an energy audit. And a lot of our members are in that space. So if you are interested, throw yourself into chat there. And I'm sure we've got energy advisors, solar, all the different types. So definitely people can help you out.
Yeah, that's a good point, Nick. It does require an EnerGuide audit that will be covered. The cost of it will be covered, but that's a prerequisite for the program. So don't go doing retrofit work and expect it to be covered if you haven't first got an energy audit.
Yeah, okay. So next, has he disappeared? Sorry, I don't see you, Phil, anymore. Maybe you can raise your hand because I don't see you disappeared. So I'm going to go over to Chris Habits now, who's been quite active in chat. Thanks so much, Chris. So come on in with your question.
Sorry to be quite so active in chat. I just have way too many opinions, as I'm sure you already know. But the question was for the energy audits the city is going to require. I know that the federal one is going to require NRC certified auditor. Is that going to be the same for the city? Is it going to be a different certification? And the other thing I wanted to say is I wanted to echo Holly's point in the chat there that the panel upgrades that Hydro Ottawa has to do is going to be a big part of this. I mean, 100 amp service, which most of us are on, is not going to handle a lot of the upgrades we need to do. And is there any plan to include that in the upgrade list?
Okay, so the upgrades with Hydro Ottawa, That would be considered an eligible cost if it's, you know, upgrading to a 200 amp service could be eligible as part of the financeable measures. And your first question about EnerGuide audits, yes, we're following the same program, the EnerGuide certification program. So those types of auditors or those certified auditors through EnerGuide are the ones that we'll be looking for this program as well. We're hoping that EnerCan will come up with a virtual audit or an EnerGuide Lite, they're calling it, so process over the next couple of years, but that's not available yet. So until that happens, we're following the standard EnerGuide audit process.
Okay, I do see Phil Riley here now, so let me unmute you. You'll have to unmute yourself there, Phil. And then we've got John Reed up next on.
Okay, I think we're good to go now, eh?
Gotcha, Phil.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Well, this one has to do with air quality in the house, Janice. As you know, I live in a pre-1900-year-old house that's been extensively renovated. But one of the things that I've had to do over the years is to try to seal many different gaps. And I think that I've overdone it from the point of view of human health concerns. You know, we don't want to be living in a carbon dioxide-rich home or with other contaminants. How do you balance the infiltration rate with human health requirements?
Yeah, so heat recovery ventilators are a standard issue for new homes now that have a tighter infiltration level. So if you've gotten your home to that point, Phil, where you're at very low infiltration, you might want to look at a heat recovery ventilator to make sure that you're getting fresh air into the home at the right levels. Your EnerGuide audit will tell you what your infiltration rate is, so you can see if you're at that point where it's recommended. Becca, do you know kind of the exchange rates per hour that would be sort of the threshold when a HRV is recommended?
I don't off the top of my head, but there are a few energy auditors, I think, on this call, so they might have an opinion on that.
Yeah.
I do have a system installed. It's just how often do I have to operate it in order to get to the ideal rate?
Oh, just in terms of, so I guess it depends a little bit on, you know, how much you're home. But I believe most of them operate at kind of a 1/3 of the time kind of time frame, considering occupied time. If you're outside of the house, you don't necessarily have to run it when you're not at home.
So the heat consumption required to do that air exchange is encouraged.
Well, it's about managing the specifics and balancing the pros and cons. And I think I can't tell you one way or another what's the right choice for you, but yeah, I would say for a human health perspective, it's important to make sure that you're running your HRV.
Like whoever installed that for you should be able to advise you on its proper use. Like if it's based on carbon dioxide levels or just based on time or thermostat run or something like that, that should be, it's going to be specific answers for your particular equipment and your particular home.
I just wanted to add, if you're willing, you know, if you're putting a heat recovery ventilation in, if you want high efficiency, you can get it. So TempF, for example, is 98% efficient in recovery. So you shouldn't have to, you know, if you want to really do a good job and keep all the heat in as you're ventilating, it is possible.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. We've got John Reed. I've got a question from Ken, and then we'll go over to Brent. So, John, go ahead and unmute yourself with your question.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm with the Hunt Club Community Association. One of the areas where you identified for single-family homes, the program would be valuable. How can community associations help?
So you can definitely help by getting the word out to your neighborhood that once the program is operational. I mean, before that, you could find out who's interested in retrofits and who might be willing to be part of, you know, a community working group on that. So definitely, it's super helpful to have community associations getting the word out through their networks, either through your own email lists or maybe through articles in the local paper or other sort of community communications lines. If there's, you know, information in your local grocery store, or each neighborhood's going to have a different approach, but there's lots of different channels, and we would really like to work with community associations to use those channels in each neighborhood that already exist.
Fabulous. I know we've got one from Brent. Ken, I'm looking for you, and if you can just raise your hand and I can unmute you a little bit easier. Let's go to Brent next, and then we'll see if we can find Ken. Brent, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay, yeah, I'm able to. I had an audit done last summer, which from that we did a few things, windows, insulation, etc. I'm just wondering if that audit could still be repurposed for this loan.
That's a good question. It's not a detail that we've explored yet. So let me talk to FCM and see if that's eligible, like if they can retroactively look at audits that have been done in the past year or something. That might be possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Great question. Yeah, it's
maybe to speak one more bit about the community association. So in the short term, you can get on the email newsletter list of Energy Evolution by looking at the Energy Evolution page. I think it's been put in the chat there a few times. And say that you want to, just mention in your email to us that you're part of a community association, and we can get you information about the program as soon as it's on the website, and you can circulate that to your neighborhood.
Okay, Ken had a question next. You should be able to unmute yourself, Ken.
Yes, I've just unmuted. Fantastic presentation, guys. Well done. You moved this along over the last few years quite well. Question I would like to ask, you've moved now from a community type initiative to a citywide, which is a mega times the project difficulty. Where do the utilities fit into this? I'm thinking of Enbridge versus Hydro Ottawa. I see Hydro Ottawa as being a friend here. You're part of the system. Enbridge is not necessarily a friend. It's a private industry with a particular requirement to its stakeholders. Where does this fit into your project?
Well, you're probably going to get a different answer from each one of us, Ken. So.
Well, that's great. Three different answers would be wonderful. Yeah.
I think what that really means is that, there's a bit of a bigger strategy regarding Enbridge that needs to be sorted out, and probably shouldn't be done in a public forum like this, just to be quite honest.
No, I'm not expecting you to sort of give any secrets, but are they going to be marketing? Are they going to be participating? Are they pro this project?
I mean, Enbridge has been participating all along in a lot of our consultations, and we've had really good support from them up to this point. With their teams. I mean, we've mostly been engaging with their conservation demand management team and their, renewable natural gas teams. So those teams have a lot of ability to support and back the kind of initiatives that we're running. And then there's going to be a significant existential challenge for Enbridge, and it's not just because of what we're doing, but what every municipality and every level of government is saying. That's a real challenge to Enbridge's current, business case. So how they shift and adjust over time is yet to be seen, right? We do hope that they're a big player and they have a lot of expertise and capacity to support. So we do hope that they will be supportive of the initiatives where they can be supportive, but there will also be things that are, directly against the Enbridge, expansion plans, things like, high performance heat pumps in new developments that don't require natural gas, right? So those kinds of things might not be in their favor, and those conversations are yet to kind of bubble up in significant detail.
Yeah, in the past, in the development district energy, which I was in, utilities have very often been very favorable when you were a small player. As you grew, then they suddenly saw market being removed from there. And as you say, they've got to start thinking about what is their new business plan, because they will see it as a direct threat at some stage. Anyway, good luck.
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of look at what FortisGas is doing in BC and how they're working with Vancouver as well, because they're a little bit ahead of us. So that's an interesting example of, one approach where they're working quite closely together. They're really kind of, you know, Vancouver is.
They did that in Vancouver, in BC, when they were required to provide energy efficiency data for buildings. And once they started doing that, they said, hey, hang on a minute. This is giving all our information to our opponents. So, yeah, I don't know. You're treading on new territory.
Exactly, yeah.
Mike, did you want to jump in there? Or?
Yeah, well, yeah, like Janice is saying, I'm dealing with Enbridge on with renewable natural gas. I'll say they're keen on it, right? It goes into their infrastructure. And you know, remember in Ottawa, we're not dealing with Enbridge Corp, we're dealing with Enbridge Gas Distribution. So it's a slight difference on that.
Right.
And I think David Wilson made a very good point that they do have a geo-district division that, you know, did a neighborhood. So are they going to get into supplying thermal as you know, a non-gas provider of thermal? If they can start thinking that way, you know, and kind of hopeful. And the conservation programs, my observation about, you know, the conservation programs have been mandated by the Energy Board, and they've been good conservation programs. I started using them before I was in the city, and I thought, you know, that they had people on it keen to go and find savings, but they're not. But you know, I think you would agree, Ken. They were not transformative, right? They were. You're still on gas.
Superficial.
Yeah, you're using 5%. I mean, let's go and have a beer, but not go to green drinks. Yeah.
No, yeah, you can have a small version. So I know Gutam. I hope I have that pronunciation right. I know Gutam had a question, so let me find him here. Everything's moving so quickly here. There he is. So you can unmute yourself now, Gutam.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. And thank you. Nice presentation. My question one is for Rebecca, like, what are the guiding principles for the standards that are being developed by the city? Is it like a mandated by our canon? What are the guiding principles? So that's for Rebecca.
Yeah, so you cut out a little bit there, Gutam. So you're wondering, what are the guiding principles for the high performance development standard?
Right.
Okay, perfect.
The second part of the question is for Janice. Is like, you know, I put it in the chat box as well, and I don't want to be a skeptic or anything, but whenever I see a chart that then I start questioning and I start becoming skeptical about that. I can be aggressive from the get-go than waiting for 2030 and like we have been sitting around nothing. And now when we are at point of no return, we are like trying not good enough, right? I mean, at least from my perspective.
Sorry to jump in there, Gutam. You're cutting off a little bit for your Wi-Fi there. So we'll go over to Rebecca just to answer the first part of your question, and then maybe we'll need to sort of go and chat for the next one.
Okay.
Yeah, so the measures within the high performance development standard are primarily being guided by sort of city policy and city guidelines that we're looking to advance. So as it relates to energy, we're following and trying to be informed as much as possible by the energy evolution model. As it relates to things like transportation, we're being informed by the energy evolution model as well as the transportation management plan. For some of the more, for the ecology metrics, we have urban canopy targets and adopted bird-friendly guidelines that are kind of the guiding pieces for those. So it's coming from a lot of different places, but that's kind of what we're trying to follow.
That's great. Thanks, Rebecca. Appreciate that. Yeah, I know we've got a question from Alex. I also wanted to let, we've got a few SmartNet Alliance members on the call as well. I just wanted to let them know I've made you into co-hosts. So at any time, if you want to jump in, just join the conversation, you can just unmute yourself now. Let's go over to Alex. I'll unmute you now and go ahead with your question.
The presentations are excellent. My question's for Janice. Janice, have you done, looked at any other municipalities that have sort of done a similar program that what you're embarking on? And have they had any success with bulk, going back to the question on bulk purchases and just specific ways to drive the prices down of especially heat pumps? I'm thinking like Vancouver, Victoria. Have you seen any, is there any way forward that we can in Ottawa sort of approach with our own community associations and try to convince our neighbors to adopt the program?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So to answer your question, I have been looking at lots of other municipalities. There's none in Canada that I've really seen that are doing a lot of bulk work too much, although Halifax's program is arguably sort of, because it's just for solar, it's called Halifax Solar City, you know, it's arguably doing just that for solar thermal and solar PV in Halifax. But, you know, more sort of general programs like ours that are covering all retrofit measures. The best I can point you to is the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, I think they're called, and they're out in sort of the northwest of the US, and they've been doing some pretty interesting work around bulk heat pumps and how to procure collectively to bring down cost, and also sort of how to expedite, you know, market maturation to bring down cost. So yeah, there's early stage research on that. We're going to just get the program launched to start and just learn how to run this program first, because that itself will be, you know, a bit of a learning curve for us. And then try to really innovate on some of these, you know, bulk procurement opportunities. But individually and within neighborhoods, there's definitely opportunities to collaborate with, you know, neighbors on working with the same contractor and negotiating special arrangements with providers. You know, you use the same electrician, the same plumber, the same renovator, the same trades folks, like same, you know, HVAC installer, and you say, I can sign up 4 of my neighbors, you know, they're going to give you a better deal than if you're just doing one at a time. And you're also going to get more efficient installation because they can just show up with one truck roll and do a bunch of projects at once. So yeah, those kinds of efforts we're hoping to get that on that neighborhood level. If we focus on each neighborhood at a time, we're hoping that will come about through some of those efforts. But yeah, the bulk procurement stuff is its own unique challenge. And we have some funds within the program to start exploring that and working on that, but how exactly we will do it is still a work in progress.
That's great. And remember just to raise your hands, everybody. We've got you know, sort of 10 or 15 minutes left of our general discussion. I know Chris Habitz has got his hand up, and I also did make some of our community partners into co-hosts. So if anybody wants to unmute after Chris and add anything to the discussion, you've got that option. Over to you, Chris.
I know I could have just unmuted myself and kicked in there, Nick, but I felt raising my hand was appropriate. The question I have, Janice, is about the landlord tenant program you said should be following the main one. I raised it in the chat, but I do feel that a lot of the most poorly performing single family and townhome units in the city are probably landlord owned and tenant occupied. So I'm wondering what the timeline is for something like that to come into play.
Yeah, no promises yet, Chris. We need to find additional sources of funding for different things. You know, I can say what other municipalities are doing, and you know, we're looking to Vancouver again, who's kind of leading in this in Canada, and they're taking the approach of just regulating, right? They're saying, we've given you enough incentives, we've given you enough time. By 2025, there will be strict regulations that, you know, the lowest performing buildings have to meet improved regulations, otherwise there's penalties. So that's the way that the various jurisdictions, including, you know, New York and San Francisco and others are pursuing, and that is likely to be how this will all happen. I'm not saying that Ottawa's considered that yet, but it likely is how we're going to have to get to those types of performances.
As an energy guy, I'm on board. As a landlord, I shuddered a little bit at that one, but we'll see what comes up in the future then.
Yeah, and I mean, there would have to be programs also that would support, right? That would say, here, we're giving you low cost, long-term money to do that work, and we're requiring it be done, right?
Absolutely.
That absolutely makes sense.
Chris is wearing 2 hats there. So thanks so much, Chris, for your questions and for your engagement in chat. We really appreciate that. And stay tuned for an announcement for you joining our alliance. So that's a little bit of a sneak peek for people too. We'll have Good Habits is going to be our latest member. I did bring in some of the SmartNet Alliance members. I know Pete's already asked a question. Dan's been active in chat. Any of our community partners or SmartNet Alliance members want to unmute and add to the discussion? Now's the time to do it.
So yes, I will. Thanks very much, Nick. There's been some specific questions about what should I do with my specific house. I have a company, the Building Science Trust, that offers that kind of a service. So we do planning to move houses to net zero. It involves an NRCan energy audit. The issue with the NRCan energy audits is they don't tell you what the costs are, what the paybacks are, what the reduction in greenhouse gases are, or when to do it. And that's what my report does. It's an additional report that gives you that kind of information. The value is pretty good. I usually pair up with EnviroCenter, and at EnviroCenter, they know how to make a house net zero. So they work on it. Another local energy auditor is HomeSol. I've been in talks with HomeSol, but haven't yet paired up with HomeSol. I suspect that they likely know how to do a net zero energy audit too. You have to be specific if you're after net zero. You have to ask for a net zero energy audit. Many of the past energy audits have simply been basically Enbridge incentive audits. So an Enbridge incentive audit usually is add some more insulation in the attic, add insulation if the basement requires it, change your furnace to high efficiency furnace, and you're locked into natural gas for next 20 years. And they're very happy to offer that. But in order to actually get to really significant greenhouse gas savings, you have to electrify. And there's a lot of nuances. Sometimes with houses, if there's a brick house, insulating the walls is very difficult on a brick house. In a vinyl sided house or wood sided house, insulating the walls may be difficult, may not align properly with what your needs are. If your needs are to move on to a heat pump and perhaps solar panels, most likely you'll find that those are cheaper options rather than insulating the exterior. So when we do an energy audit, we identify all of those things and we advise what's the best plan for your precise house.
Thanks,
and that company is the Building Science Trust.
That's great, Dan, and I'll share your link there in chat as well, so people can get a hold of you. I know you've got a lot of really good information on your website. Janice, you had a thought there?
Oh, just saying thanks to Dan. He's got a lot of expertise, so that's really
absolutely helpful. Yeah. He's a valuable member, sir. Anybody else have any questions? Any members want to jump in here? That was the time.
I'll just pop in, Nick, Joe Mulhall, and say that the Alliance members have been coming together over the last few months here to have good discussions about where we're going. I have to congratulate you on the programs that you're bringing up, and we're committed to working together with you to go forward and make these things happen. So really appreciate the hard work you're doing, and the fact you've come out tonight to give us lots of really good information. So thanks very much, and enjoyed your presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Great words, and yeah, it's been exciting to work with everyone and sort of see where SmartNet Alliance can help accelerate this these project pathways as well. I know there's some exciting opportunities to get our members involved and to help with the engagement in the community as well. So we're kind of wrapping up here, everybody. I want to open up to the panelists, to Mike, Janice, or Rebecca for some final words. If you do have any, just jump in now. And remember, everybody, you can save the chat. Just hit the 3 dots beside the file there, and you can save your chat. A lot of good stuff from tonight.
Yeah, well, I guess just final words from my side. So thanks so much for your support for this program, and we really look forward to working with all of you as champions and megaphones in your community and thought leaders to really help us get the word out beyond just the early adopters. We're really going to need that community effort, like Ken was saying. We're also looking for really great people to add to our team. So if you know someone who's really qualified, keep them in mind and tell them to sign up for our newsletter, because we'll be posting some job postings pretty soon, and we'd love to get some really skilled folks from the community on our team. Yeah, anything else on your side, Becca or Mike?
No, just thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity, and yeah, glad to keep the dialogue going and the exchange of ideas. That's our lifeblood.
Yeah, absolutely. There's only so much you can do kind of sitting alone in your office, right? Or at our home office nowadays. But it's great to engage with the community, to see the excitement. It's really palpable, especially when we talk about windows and loan programs and development standards. So it's great to see. We had 86 people at most on the call, which is in the 10 months we've been doing our virtual green drinks, that's the most we've hit. So congratulations, everybody. That's amazing. And, it's a couple hours later and we still have over 40. So that's fantastic. Want to thanks again to Mike Fletcher, to Rebecca Haggen, to Janice Ashworth. Thanks for your hard work, for joining us for the presentation, and also to our SmartNet members for the hard work they're doing. I'm going to stay on the line for a little bit so everybody gets a chance to copy the chat. I know David, who actually had a Corona in his hand, well done. He wanted to come on and say a few words. So David, you can unmute there. Go ahead. Maybe it was just a cheer.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that I really appreciate the speakers coming out and talking about it. I've been working on this project for quite a while in the background, and I really appreciate all the work that they've done and that they're getting the word out to the public, and hopefully there would be some enthusiasm about retrofits and heat pumps. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, David. And I just wanted to share our link as well, SmartNet Alliance. So if anybody isn't on our mailing list, this is definitely the time to do it. I've seen a couple people come on tonight, so that's great. We'll be continuing the programming with our March green drinks as well. So we'll be talking about heat pumps. So it's a bit of a continuation of this conversation. So that we'll put that out next week. The registrations will open. So invite you to connect with us. Remember that we've also recorded this session, so we're putting that out on our YouTube page. So give us a subscribe over there. And yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody. It's inspiring to see all the people who care about this mission. And we're not going to get to those targets alone. So thank you so much, everybody. Gutan maybe had some final words there. Not sure if his Wi-Fi is going, but go ahead there, Gutan.
No, I just wanted to say thank you. That's all.
No problems. Thanks so much to you too. So yeah, thanks again, everybody. Great discussions. I think we'll put the whole thing out on YouTube because the whole, so many great conversations. Like I said, I'm going to stay online for a couple minutes so people can capture the chat. But as of now, we'll put an end. We're right at 8:30, so that's great timing. And we'll hope to see everybody in a month when we talk about heat pumps. Thanks again, everybody, for joining our virtual green drinks.
Good night, all.
Hey, Nick, are you able to download the chat to send that to us?
I downloaded it,
Oh,
Janice.
great. Thanks, Becca. I feel like there were some questions I might have missed as they were coming hot and heavy there.
Yeah, we'll get a copy
sort of-
too, so I'll make sure that gets over to you guys as well as
Good.
the reporting.
Good.
Great
Great,
job.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Glad
These
everybody's
programs
Wi-Fi
get-
kept going.
You know, our program design is definitely supported by and helped out by, you know, by the good work of the people on this team and this group. So, and, you know, people like Matt Jones have been contributing and his volunteer time, and we've had a number of others, you know, contribute their perspective. So that does really help our work. So thank you guys so much for that, and keep it coming, because we'll be able to make better programs with the expertise in the whole community, not just us alone in our houses, like you said, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. And a nod to the rest of your team. I know Emma was on the call. She's been great to work with. You mentioned your colleague Simon. I know there's quite a few other people on the climate change team. So big thanks to them. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going.
Perfect.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Till next time.
Okay.
Over and out. Good job, Nick. You're doing
Yeah.
really well.